In this video, we're going to have a look at the converse of Pythagoras. Before we get started, we need to understand what a converse statement is. Essentially, a converse statement, you can flip the order of a statement. What do I mean by that? Well, if I say the statement, if it is sunny, then the beaches will be busy. If I say the converse of that, if the beaches are busy, then it is sunny. So you see how I've flipped both? And it seems to make sense here. Sometimes converse statements can be true and not true. For example, if the grass is wet, then it has rained. The converse of that, if it has rained, then the grass is wet. Well, only one of those statements is true because the grass could be wet without raining. If we consider the converse of Pythagoras, Pythagoras' theorem states the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Essentially, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. The square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Well, the converse of that, so we know this is true, so if the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides, then the sum of the squares of the other two sides is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Yeah, we'll just kind of flip that statement around. And we can use this logic and this reasoning to try and determine if a triangle is right angled. Okay, so if we have a look, we've got an exam question down there. We'll have a look at a few examples. I'm going to draw a triangle. Okay, so I know this looks right angled, but we don't know it is right angled. So I'm just going to turn this off again. Is this right angled? Okay, let's say that this side is 9 centimeters. Let's say this is 12 centimeters. And let's say that this is 15 centimeters. So in a triangle, the biggest side is always the hypotenuse, or the biggest side is always across from the biggest angle. So the biggest side here is 15. So what we're going to do is, if this were the hypotenuse, we would square this side. So let's do our longest side. So the longest side, that's going to be 15, and we're going to square that. 15 squared is 225. So if this is right angled, then the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So let's have a look at the other two sides. Shorter sides. So the shorter sides are 9 and 12, so 9 squared plus 12 squared. That's going to be 81 plus 144, and that is 225. So do you see that in this case here, the answers are the same? So this is implying that the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. This means that Pythagoras' theorem holds. This means that this is a right angle. When we do a Pythagoras theorem question, or sorry, a converse of Pythagoras question, we need to put a statement alongside this. So it would need to be something like this. We need to prove that it's right angled. So we would say, since 9 squared plus 12 squared is equal to 15 squared, then by the converse of Pythagoras, the triangle is right angled. So you need that statement there to get your final mark to justify if it is or not. Okay, we could look at another problem as well. Let's draw another triangle. Okay, so let's say that this is 6 centimeters. Let's say that this is 8 centimeters. And let's say that this is 11 centimeters. So the hypotenuse would be the longest side in a right angled triangle. So if we look at the longest side, that's going to be 11. So if we square that, that's 121. If we have a look at the shorter sides, because the square of the hypotenuse should be the same as the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So 6 squared plus 8 squared, well, that's 36 plus 64, which is 100. So hopefully you can see that these values are not the same. The sum of the square of the hypotenuse is not equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Therefore, this is not the hypotenuse. It is not right angled. So we need to say, I'll just turn this off. We'll say, since 6 squared plus 8 squared does not equal 11 squared, then by the converse of Pythagoras, the triangle is not right angled. Okay, so let's see how this can look in an exam situation. This was taken from national5maths.co.uk and it was a question from the 2019 paper. It's paper 2, question 11. The diagram shows the course for a jet ski race. The course is indicated by markers at A, B and C. The total length of the course is 1,500 metres. B is this distance from A, C is this distance from A, C is due north of B. Okay, determine whether B is due east of A. Okay, so what we want to do here is justify our answer as well. This is essentially, we want to verify is whether B is east of A. So essentially, if we think about a compass point, never eat shredded wheat, north and east, there should be a right angle in here. So we want to determine, is there a right angle here? That's what we want to figure out. Okay, so to figure out if a triangle is right angled, we're going to use the converse of Pythagoras. But to do that, we need to know all three sides. So the total length is 1,500. Yeah, the total length of the course is 1,500. Therefore, the perimeter of the course is 1,500. So if we add these two values together and then subtract, that should be able to tell us what the missing length is. So if we do 600 plus 650, that's going to be 1,250. And if we subtract that from 1,500, we're going to get 250. I'm just going to lock this into place. That's 250 metres. That's 900, yep, so that's 1,500 metres. So what we want to do is we want to say, okay, well, the longest side is going to be 650, and we're going to square that. Because the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So 650 squared is 422,500. We'll square the shorter sides. So that's going to be 600 squared plus 250 squared. I'm just going to do this in a few wee steps here. 600 squared plus 250 squared. And that is also 422,500. So these values are exactly the same. Oops. These values are the exact same. Because they're the same, that means the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. The sum of the squares of the other two sides is the square of the hypotenuse. This means that the triangle is right angled. So we can then just say this in a statement. We'll say, since 600 squared plus 250 squared is equal to 650 squared, then by the converse of Pythagoras, the triangle is right angled. However, this question is within the context of a jet ski race, so we need to make sure our answer refers back to this context. Determine whether B is due east of A. So we can say, therefore, B is due east of A. Okay, that's us worked through Converse of Pythagoras. The questions always kind of take a similar slant. You work out your longest side, you square it, square your shorter sides, and then you've got a statement comparing. Thank you very much.